It's 7:28 p.m. as I arrive at the scene of the crime, seeing the body lay there with multiple wounds, signs of torture. It's pretty clear whoever committed this hideous crime hated the victim deeply. But as I step closer to have a look as to who this victim is, I'm shocked and in awe as I take a long puff of my pussy stick. I ask the question, who killed Chivalry? In order for me to conclude this case successfully and catch the culprit, I need to understand who Chivalry is. I need to know their history, because I only know the public face that is Chivalry. When I get back at the office, I start my investigation. Quite to my surprise, there's many things I didn't realize that Chivalry was. So Chivalry is quite old. This being was born around the 11th or 12th century in the middle of Europe, particularly France, modern day France. So Chivalry is really French. I thought, well, no one likes the French. This should be easy to conclude. As I dug deeper, I found Chivalry did many things. But I digress a bit. What I also found interesting is that Chivalry evolved throughout the years, became more closely tied with Christianity and the Christian values embedded in this knighthood. As you know, the Bible has its 10 commandments, so does Chivalry, which is interesting. But that was published in the 19th century. Anyways, I digress. I take another puff of my pussy stick. I think out loud. So if Chivalry is actually a French Christian that was influenced by their former boss, the Roman Empire, and after finding a new job as a creator of ethos for knights, mainly who happen to be men in Europe, I'm pretty sure women resent Chivalry subconsciously. Because it's pretty clear it gave birth also to toxic masculinity. As we know, during war, men used to pillage, rape, and create chaos, especially to women and children. As the generations continue through the millennia to the modern day, surely the feminists then came to the fold and realized Chivalry is part of the patriarchy. So now we have our first suspect, the feminist.
Why is it remotely patronising for a man to open a door and say, please, ladies first?
A whole load of other assumptions. So the kind of man who might go, ladies first, or pull out your chair, or very much pay for dinner, is kind of expecting something back.
I'm all about being polite, but sometimes I feel like Chivalry is less about being polite and kind and more about maintaining gender norms that make no effing sense.
But as my investigation continues, I come across new evidence. And then a new suspect also. The suspect is average frustrated chump, aka beta male, aka submissive male, aka that friend zone dude. How is he a suspect, you may ask? Well, simply put, they let people walk all over them. They're not independent thinking, they're not affirmative, they're rather weak mentally. I struggle to see or find evidence that conclude that perhaps indeed average frustrated chump, aka beta male, really committed the crime of killing Chivalry. But then as I look at the feminist and then I look at beta male, the evidence was overwhelming. It was all in front of me all along. Instead of looking for one culprit, I should have been looking for multiple. And then he hit me like a Mike Tyson punch. Both feminist and beta male conspired, teamed up to not just torture but to kill Chivalry. Because Chivalry impacted both feminist and beta male in a negative way.
Right. So what's been lost in this whole, 40-year experiment, really, or progress, however you want to define it, is the yin and yang, or the dance between women and men. And men and women now are completely confused and lost about who's supposed to do what, who wants what, and what women specifically are confused about is men, and how that is in their DNA to provide and protect women. That is who they are. That is their identity. And we've essentially ripped it out of them. And when they become unmoored. I mean, if you don't let them do what's in them to do, you're going to disrupt that dance. And so what I'm trying to say is, look, masculinity and femininity are wonderful things in and of themselves. And when they work in tandem, sparks fly. I mean, it's awesome, but we're not allowing that to happen because we are infused with this message about equality, this idea that men and women are the same.
Chivalry's history is clear. It somewhat tried to convince men to be better versions of themselves. But that also means to feminists, a man who's like that cannot be controlled by them. That means to beta male, they are forced to be independent, thinking to be independent themselves, which we all know beta male is not capable of such independence. They are dependent, codependent. So it made sense that a feminist who is by her own nature a leading lady will want a submissive male. And there it all came together. A conspiracy. Don't get me wrong, chivalry was never really good at ensuring that they've solved the harsh and brutal nature that is man. Chivalry tried to make man better, but in doing so, they neglected the feminine, who in turn produced feminist. And obviously feminists seeing her mother, the feminine, being ignored by chivalry, only focusing on males and masculinity, would create resentment. Chivalry also ignored beta male, never helping the beta male converting from weak mentality. Hence he had no problem conspiring to end chivalry's life. Now we have our suspects. So now we have motive. Now I can conclude this case. I take a couple more pulls of my pussy stick, finish my report, concluding that feminist helped by beta male killed chivalry.